All right, everyone, there's still a lot of talk of impeachment. I'd like to point something really quickly out, though, and I've noticed this, and I don't know if you have. Despite all the talk of impeachment, and right now a civil war because of Antifa or some stupid shit like that, they're trying to compare Antifa to American GIs storming Germany during World War II. Oh man, I could make 10 videos about how dumb that claim is. But I'm not going to even fucking bother at this point because no sane person is taking it seriously. Anyway, the odds of impeachment of Trump are pretty low, and I'll tell you why. Part of it is literally nothing more than public perception. The Trump derangement syndrome that you saw, like the moral outrage in maybe the first year of the presidency with the Mueller probe, more Russia bullshit, Trump Tower, Trump's taxes, he's sexist, Billy Bush tapes. The stuff you saw during the election and not that long thereafter sparked a much more visceral, strong response than what you see now. What you see right now is that for like 48 hours on Twitter, basically online, people were talking about Trump impeachment, but then they defaulted to trusting the Dems in the House and Senate to actually do their job. Whereas before they stood around with signs that hashtag resist and pink hats, we're not going anywhere, we will camp out on the White House lawn for 4 years if need be to stop the evil agenda of tyrant Trump. Where are they now? They don't exist anymore. Where are the pink hat protests? Where's the hashtag resist on the White House lawn? It's a couple of hippies smoking dope out there, and that's basically it. The actual outrage dried up in favor of just a sort of vacuous, generalistic sort of feeling of resistance against Trump that takes no more substantial a form than people posting shit on Twitter. It's totally different. You can feel it's almost like a malaise, like a boredom. It almost feels a little bit like the Democrats when Hillary became the nominee. You know, and about a third of the party was deeply let down, and another third was like, oh, well, we'll settle for Hillary, and then only like a few of them were like shill for Hill mode. Well, you're probably going to get that again this time around. Look, ultimately, your nominee is likely, still, even at this particular juncture, to be Joe Biden, of all people. That'll go over really well. Or Elizabeth Warren, who's basically the rest of that 90% likelihood. Beyond that, it's almost not worth thinking about. If Bernie Sanders becomes the nominee, he turns off all the sane business class voters. Kamala is no longer viable, and Buttigieg is a long shot. And then having some dark horse candidate like Goodman, I think, is still rambling about Hillary Clinton getting in. No offense to HA, but I don't believe that's likely to happen. Every day that goes on, the less likely anyone else is to enter the race. I guess someone with a lot of money and name recognition can wait longer. Like Biden was like the last person to get in, essentially, who was viable before. But at some point, you got to say, well, there wouldn't be enough time to campaign. You know, voting comes up. Well, when's the first vote cast in the first primary, which is, I believe, again, Iowa. I can't remember exactly what month. It's not like there's a huge amount of time left, though. We've got one more, I think, round of debates, and then that's basically it. People go and bumble around for a few months, and then the voting begins. What we've got here is a case where Trump cannot legitimately be impeached based on a whim, because it'll backfire in a spectacular fashion. My prediction is that if Pelosi's not completely lost it, her basic operative strategy is not to actually try to impeach Trump, simply to have impeachment inquiry going over his head, hanging over him like a dark cloud during the election itself. By having that as a major issue, therefore, it helps distract from Trump saying, hey, I did build portions of the wall, we retrofitted portions of the wall, and the rest is speeding ahead. 500 miles of it by election day, supposedly. That's what he wants. Again, though, you're not getting as many updates because it's being blocked out of the news cycle now, isn't it? The Democrats have adapted to Trump's strategy if this is what Pelosi's doing. So we can run on that. You can say the economy ultimately is looking up, and it is. The Dow Jones occasionally has a brain fart for a couple of days, but ultimately keeps recovering over and over. Taxes are lower. For the average American, they're paying less now, including most of the middle and working class, which is great. We don't have any major wars going on. We have conflicts around the world like we have for a million years, but he hasn't started a major conflict. He hasn't increased any major conflict. That counts for him. Largely, and this is something that boils down purely to partisan opinion for most people, there has been no significant domestic scandal during the Trump presidency. There really hasn't. The Mueller probe doesn't count because it exonerated him. The Trump Tower meeting doesn't count because it was bullshit. Trump's taxes don't count. They're still trying to get to the bottom of what he paid and when. Not that it matters, because ultimately, again, there's no legitimate reason to believe there should even be an investigation because there's no smoke. Therefore, there's no reason to believe that there's fire. You don't have an actual domestic scandal under the Trump presidency. You really don't. The Ukraine whistleblower thing, you've got allegations of wrongdoing by Trump and those around him in a hyperbolic whistleblower report that's still being investigated right now in such a partisan manner that it's going to fall flat. The Democrats could have gone the solemn route. They could have said, well, it looks like something deeply disturbing has gone on. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And muzzled people like Schiff and AOC who took what could have been a win for them and turned it into a partisan bullshit fest. It's already become that. What's happened is that Trump has become such a partisan lightning rod that the Democrats can't get any footing on being the party of sense, being the party of tact and strategy, which normally they could probably do. Like, Trump isn't exactly a tactful individual, very strategic, very intelligent. He's not mouthing off on a whim. He's doing it for strategic purposes, but he lacks that aspect, the solemnness of the office of presidency that normally gives him a little bit of protection. He doesn't have that. Instead, he took up the opposite line. He said, no, I'm going to be brash. I'm Donald Trump. I'm president, but I'm also Donald Trump, and that's more important than being president, I think, to him anyway. He's basically half-actor, which is great for foreign diplomacy for anyone who's not already an ally. Not so good for our Western European allies, as you've seen. But as far as dealing with China and Russia is pretty good. That's another thing. What about trade deals? It looks like the Democrats are speeding ahead to try to get the USMCA passed now, of all things. They're going to give Trump a win, but because of the impeachment inquiry, it's an attempt to block things out. But here's the thing. Pelosi might be reaping the rewards accidentally. And if it's not her strategy, if they really think that they can manage to impeach Donald Trump, I'm sorry, my friend, but I think that's going to fall flat. The average American, I don't think, is too interested in that because, again, no major domestic or foreign problems. Like Antifa, Civil War stuff, but that's bullshit. I'll blow over in 24 hours. Nobody will remember the old woman with a walker getting blocked by Antifa members. Hey, they didn't even knock her down and rape her. This is Antifa. They can't get laid the normal way. I always suspect that they're either pedophiles or they rape old women in an alleyway because they can't do anything else. Or they just jerk each other off. Totally consensual, by the way. State smiles upon it. That matters a great deal to them. Che Guevara had no problem with these people whacking each other off in their basement, drinking Gatorade the whole time. That's what I think of. No, that's not a major problem. No major foreign problems. Look, I don't think that our troops should be stationed in Syria or Afghanistan or anything, but there's no major escalation of these particular theaters. Again, it's just as regrettable now as it was under Bush or Obama, but he hasn't added fuel to the fire. He hasn't increased these problems. The economy hasn't collapsed. You know, I thought it was going to be doomsday. Krugman said there'd be a Great Depression by now. Years have gone by, and the economy is still churning ahead. Where are all of these problems that Trump was supposedly going to cause? We will be a pariah with no allies. The world economy will flatline. Civil war will break out. Maybe a nuclear conflict. That's funny because none of these things have happened. So that's why I don't think Trump will be impeached. All the catastrophism in the world got levied against him, and none of it ended up coming true. Instead, things are pretty calm. There are only two things that are calm: Trump's Twitter and the legacy media reaction to Trump's Twitter. And that's basically become the bread and circus of this particular era because there's not really that much else going on that's scary. There's nothing to titillate people. What have they got? This would be a very, very boring presidency. Can you imagine if Trump weren't the president? Imagine our president were like Obama. Solemn. Quiet, soft-spoken, absent at times for weeks and weeks, goes golfing, doesn't talk to anyone, certainly doesn't make mean tweets about people. We would be bored to goddamn tears. There's no economic downturn, no looming war, no major domestic problems other than the normal. Antifa went and protested. They killed a cop. Oh my God. It's an extreme event. No, it's not. It happens on every fucking weekend. Yeah, and then the cops come in, they crack some skulls. Oh my God. Yeah, dude, it's called Portland. This thing, it's been happening for decades. Dude, I can remember early wave YouTube watching footage of Antifa and Black Bloc and these groups sparring with police at the G whatever protests and shit like that. That was years ago. I remember looking up riot footage. You'd get high and you'd look up riot footage. It was pretty stirring at the time, back when you're in college or whatever. Needed extra coffee today to deal with this bullshit. Impeachment, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to get impeached. If he does, it's not going to matter. The Senate's not going to vote to convict him. You already know that. That's a foregone conclusion, so Pelosi would be nuts to even bother. It will backfire in her face. She has strategic sense. That's why I almost think she's got ulterior motives, and she's doing this specifically just to have an inquiry over his head during the election. By doing that, she hopes to muzzle some of his worst attacks. I don't know how successful a strategy that'll be. The mere fact that they've cracked the term impeachment open on a general basis instead of just letting it linger over in the corner of the far left like AOC and Ilhan Omar is a gamble for the Democratic Party. And the polls are split on whether Americans support it or not. If you ask them, do you believe you should have an impeachment inquiry to investigate wrongdoing? Yeah, most people seem to support that. By the way, it's fine. Let them inquire all they want. It's not an impeachment proceeding in and of itself. If you ask them, hey, do you think Trump should be impeached? Depends on which poll you consult. Some of them show overwhelming support for it. Some of them show overwhelming opposition. I don't know. It seems to be a 50-50 proposition. The problem is for the Democrats, they don't want to have just 50% of the country backing them at this point. Because if the only thing someone supports them on is impeachment, but they look at the economy and foreign tranquility and things like that and gauge them all as being in Trump's favor, they're going to vote for Trump if they vote at all. It'd be soft support, definitely. It's not like it can't be switched around at the last minute, but generally speaking, I think they break for him, not for the Democrats. If the Democrats are the party of we're trying to impeach the president, and the president is the party of everything else, he wins. The Democrats don't seem to understand this. I think that they're setting themselves up for failure. That's about all. Peace out.